Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the IDF Forum, Navigating Life with PI, Communicating with Your Healthcare Team. I'm Kathy Antela, Vice President of Education at the Immunodeficiency Foundation, and I'll be your host tonight. Before we begin, a quick disclaimer that the information presented during this event is not medical advice, nor is it intended to be a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always please seek the advice of a physician or other qualified healthcare provider with questions concerning your medical condition. IDF's mission is improving the diagnosis, treatment, and quality of life of people affected by primary immunodeficiencies through fostering a community empowered by advocacy, education, and research. This means that we are committed to serving you and providing you with the tools and resources needed to be your own best advocate and a champion in the PI community. By offering these tools and resources, IDF fulfills its mission of seeking to ensure that everyone in the United States affected by PI has a fully informed understanding of, first of all, the PI diagnosis that affects them, all available treatment options, the expected standard of care, and all the opportunities for connection and support within the community. It is because of our wonderful sponsors that these forums and so many of our other programs are made available. And I would like to take a second here to name off all of our sponsors of this year's forums: CSL Behring, Grifols, Takeda, Horizon Therapeutics, Octapharma, Accredo, ADMA Biologics, Bioproducts Laboratory, Farming Healthcare, X4 Pharmaceuticals, Kedrion Biopharma, and Celio Health. As always, there are IDF events happening throughout the nation and throughout the year. If you haven't joined us for a Get Connected group, please check it out. They are small virtual networking groups throughout the nation. And there might be one in your area where you can meet people who live close to you, or you can join one clear across the nation, doesn't matter. And then upcoming forums. Next week is session 2 of Zebras Fit for Life. Following week, flu season. Unfortunately, it's just around the corner. So what do we need to know this year? And then the following week, first week in September on a Thursday, is Zebras Fit for Life session 3. And that one will be yoga from your chair. And somebody asked us about that last week. So we're looking forward to it. Here we go with our presentation. I would like to introduce Colleen Brock, who is a nurse and is the manager of education at the Immunodeficiency Foundation. So Colleen, take it away and educate us about navigating life with PI, communicating with our healthcare team.
Thanks, Kathy, and welcome everybody this evening. I'm excited to see everybody back again, and to the new people who haven't been here before, welcome. We like to have a good time at these forums. So this evening we're going to talk about coordinating your care. And to give you a little backstory for those of you who don't know me, I have CVID, as do 2 of our children. So our son, who is 26, and our daughter, who is now 22. So I have been living in the parent world for quite a while, and I was diagnosed about 7, 8 years ago after having breast cancer that wasn't going so well, and they couldn't figure out why my treatments were nearly killing me. And my oncologist sent me to the immunologist because of our children. And then as my children said, "Welcome to the club, Mom," I was like, okay, great, thanks. So I joined the IDF community as an official member and not just a mom. So I have learned how to coordinate my children's care with doctors, but I've had to learn how to coordinate my own care. And it's different in both directions. So you are the top of the team, and whether that is as a parent or whether that is yourself. You are the one that is in control. And you're also going to be the one who is teaching a lot. That's something I learned very early on. Don't assume any of them know what you're talking about. If you assume, you're going to find out real quick that your assumption's probably wrong. There are going to be some that are going to know. There are going to be some positions along your journey that are going to want to know. They're going to want to be educated, and that's going to be exciting. There are going to be others you are going to want to never see again. And that's just how it goes. But the members of your team are also your family, your friends, all the doctors, the nurses that are at the doctor's offices, the nurses in the hospital, your psychologist, if you have one, your pharmacist plays an important role, especially if you have more than one physician involved in your care. Your specialty pharmacy, if you're on IG replacement, will play a role. Your social worker, if you need one, your insurance company, you will talk to them probably more than you want to. And, there can be a variety of people that are part of your team, but understand that at the top, it has to be you. And we're going to talk about tonight how to do that when you're feeling good and to put things in place so that you can handle it when you don't feel so good. So the first thing to understand is you have rights. And I talk to people often who say, well, they told me I can't. Well, you have rights and you are entitled to certain things. And IDF has a flyer that has those rights explicitly written out. You have the right to your medical information. You have the right for it to be correct. And you have the right to have it corrected. It's not an easy process, but you have that right. You have the right to choose who you see. And there are certain hospital systems who make that very difficult. And they will say, well, if you're seeing so-and-so, you can't change. No, you have that right. And it may be that you have to get the hospital advocacy program involved and talk to somebody in that department. But oftentimes talking to the physicians or the department head and explaining why it is you want to change, you can get it changed. And we'll talk about why you may want to do that later, but that is a right that you have. You are certainly entitled to be involved in every healthcare decision. No decision that involves you or your children who are minors. Now, children who are not minors, it gets a little more dicey. But if you have children who are minors, you have every right to be involved in every single decision that affects them. Fair treatment, non-discrimination. Goes without saying. You have that right. Privacy and protection. There are laws that protect us, that protect our information, protect people talking about us without our explicit written permission. And you have the right to file a grievance if something doesn't go the way that you feel it should. Unfortunately, I have had to do one of those. We had a physician who, in my mind, harmed our son because he would not do any kind of testing on our son in the hospital, said I needed to get over it, said he had a cold and I needed to go home and just give him some cold medicine and he'd be fine. And he ended up in the hospital nearby for 10 days with pneumonia the next morning. And we filed a grievance. Our pediatrician filed a grievance. We filed a grievance. So you have that right. And I encourage you, if you ever feel that you have been wronged in any way, shape, or form, to follow it through. So where do you start? It's kind of overwhelming. And if you're at the beginning of the journey, it's easier. We talked last time about, I've just been diagnosed. Now, what do I do? Those of you who are just starting out, it will be a little more simple because you're not going to have maybe the amount of paperwork. But those of you who are in the middle of your journey, you can start at any time to become organized, but preparation is the key to success. And we're going to talk about what does that look like. So one of the things that I did was create a notebook. And in that notebook, I had the biggest binder I could find because I knew where I was going. And I divided it into categories. And I filled it with paper and I would journal basically. So you can do it however you feel most comfortable, however it is most easily understood to you. You can put it on the computer. You can use a system if you know of one. IDF used to have an EPHR, but unfortunately it is ending as of September 1st, although you can download and save all the information that you have entered into there. But what you're going to want to do is have your diagnoses. What have you been diagnosed with? When, where were you diagnosed, and who diagnosed you with that? So in my case, I had breast cancer. Who diagnosed me? When, where? I was diagnosed with common variable immunodeficiency. By who? I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. When, why? I had all of it documented. And the biggest thing is, the dates of when, so that other physicians can understand what diagnoses came when. You want to have your allergies and your intolerances. A lot of people will write their allergies, but they will forget to put down drugs they just don't tolerate. And there's a big difference. An allergy is a true anaphylactic allergy. So you are having a massive rash to an antibiotic. Your eyes are swelling shut, or you have a medication that you can't breathe and things like that. Those are true anaphylactic allergies. Intolerances can be, I was on the medication, I started it, and 48 hours later, I had diarrhea and I was sick to my stomach. Well, you don't want to take that. You're not necessarily allergic to it. And there's a difference, because if you say you're allergic to a medication, any medication that falls into that family now has to be eliminated. So if you say, oh, I'm allergic to penicillin, but you took amoxicillin and it just kind of upset your stomach, it doesn't necessarily mean you can't have any medication that ends or is in that family of the cillins. So you want to write down, and it's very important, what medication and what reaction you had. So that's for the allergies and intolerances, but you always want to have a medication list that you are currently on. And I usually keep this towards the front of my book. What medicines do you take every day? What dose? Why do you take them? When did you start and when did you stop? When did the dose change? Anything that changes in there, so that if you need to go somewhere, you have it down. The other thing that I did was I put all of my medications on a piece of paper that was small in size. Just a regular sort of small notepad. And at the bottom, I put my major diagnoses. So I had my CDID, I had my breast cancer, I had my RA, I have hypothyroidism. So I had some of the major things. I took a picture of it. I had my husband take a picture of it. So it is on our cameras. So if I am ever somewhere that I can't remember something by chance, I can pull it up. If I'm ever somewhere that I can't talk, he can pull it up and he has it on his phone and he can say exactly what I'm on. And that has happened. So I recommend that if you have it on your phone, that you have it on a significant other's phone who may be with you in case of an emergency, or that would be your contact for an emergency, to understand and tell people exactly what medications you're on. So physician visits. This is something where you're going to want, this is more where journaling kind of comes into play. You're going to write down the date. What were your symptoms? What made you go to the doctor? What were you diagnosed with? And then how are you treated? And then usually I will follow it up with, how long did it take for me to get better? Or did it take 2 rounds of antibiotics? So I started out with Ceftin and then I needed Zithromax, or then I got worse and I needed Ceftin and Zithromax and prednisone and a nebulizer. Whatever kind of goes on, I keep it kind of all together so that I can paint a picture to whatever doctor I'm seeing for that. And also, when you have to look back in time, does that picture follow a pattern? So in other words, at one point, my daughter was in the hospital and we were looking at something and I went, that's quite interesting. And I never saw it until I saw it in black and white. She was always seemed to be hospitalized every single June. And it was always with the same thing. But I had it all documented, but I had never really put it together. So it really helps with a history and kind of looking for patterns when doctors are looking for things. Hospitalizations, same thing. Why are you there? What did they do while you were there? How long were you there? And where were you? Radiology testing, what type did you have done? Where did you have it done? And what were the results? And now, because portals are so easily accessible, it's easy to go in and print them off, paper hole punch them and stick them in that notebook, or download them onto your computer so that you have access to them. Blood work, what type? What were the results? Did you have a CBC done? Did you have a liver profile done? What did you have drawn? And what were the results? And when did you have it done? Again, you can pull them off the portal nowadays and you can easily keep track of them. You want a list of all your specialists. So you want to know who are the doctors taking care of you, where they're located, and their phone number. And again, you can put them in order of how frequent you see them. You know, maybe you're in the hospital more often, so your hospitalizations are towards the front of your notebook. Maybe you're not, they're in the back, however you want to do it. You can also keep track of your treatments in that notebook. You can write your lot numbers. You can write your reactions. You can write, the date. The whole purpose behind it is accuracy and having it all located in one place that you can easily access it when needed. You can take it with you to the doctor. You can take it with you to the hospital. Everything is there that anybody needs to know. So I think it's a very good system to keep everything organized. So now you've got all your information. Now you're facing an appointment. And the first question when they waltz in the door is, hey, how are you doing? You look great. Thanks. Yeah, I don't feel so good. So the biggest thing getting ready for an appointment are questions. And if you're going in, whether for a routine appointment or a sick appointment, you want to have no more than 5, because you got to remember their time is short, their time is valuable. So you always want to have the number one question you want answered to be the very first question you ask them. And even if it is, I'm absolutely fabulous, but I have this one question that I want to ask you. It doesn't matter, but just making that very first question being the one you really, really want answered, and then follow it with the next, and the next in importance of order so that you get those questions answered. When they say, how have you been feeling? Tell them how you've been feeling physically and emotionally. Some doctors will ask you both, some will not. But right now, especially, our physical health is just as important as our mental health. And we're forgetting the mental health part. And that's getting to be more and more and more important as we kind of are going back to being locked down again. We're not technically locked down like we were, but we all feel it. We're all back to masking. We're all back to social distancing. And it's okay to say, I don't like it. I'm angry. I'm tired. And it's okay to tell your physician that. They need to know both sides of how you're doing. Changes in your body. If something isn't feeling right, something isn't right, it's off, it just doesn't, it feels weird, whatever the situation, bring it up. Ask them what you need to do, your worries, your concerns, issues related to your treatment. Please, if you have problems with your treatment or if you're having side effects, please speak up. We talked about this last time. No treatment should make you sick. There are too many options nowadays, whether it's the method or whether it's the medication, for anybody to be suffering. There are going to be a few that just for whatever reason, their body does not tolerate IG replacement, but the majority of the people living with PI and getting IG replacement should be able to get their infusions and be absolutely fine. I work through mine. I have no problem. My children get theirs. When they were younger, they went back to school and then they did their sports. Now they get it and they're off with their friends. I mean, that's how it should be. So if you're laying in bed for days after, or you have a violent headache, or you feel sick, please talk to your doctor about that. Insurance and benefit coverage that it could affect your healthcare choice. Your doctor needs to know if you are having a problem with your insurance. They may not be able to solve it, but they're going to be able to point you in the direction of somebody who can. And that's what's important. But they can't help what they don't know. So how do you communicate with your healthcare team? Some of it we just talked about. You've talked, you've asked your questions, you've said your stuff that's going on. Now it's their turn. So take notes. You can turn your phone on and ask them if you can record it. You can ask a friend to go with you and take notes, especially in the beginning. If you're newly diagnosed, there's a lot of stuff that you're not going to understand. You're going to hear parts of it, and then you're going to get in the car and you're going to be like, oh man, what was the rest of it? I don't understand. And what did they tell me to do? Take somebody with you. It never hurts. Even if you're 10 years into it, it doesn't hurt. If you are a parent and you have a child who is transitioning into adulthood and they're transitioning into adult care, go with them, let them talk. You be the backup in case they have a question or they're not quite sure about something or they forget to ask about something and you kind of nudge them a little bit. And then in the car, you can talk about, what do you think? How did it go? What do you think of their answers? And kind of talk about how they interpreted what they heard. If there's no one that can go with you, like I said, ask if you can record it on your phone. And that way you can listen when you get home. Why is good communication helpful? Because it helps you to find out current information related to your PI. It lets you participate in decision-making. Remember I said that is your right. Well, you can't make a decision unless you have the knowledge to understand what you are deciding upon. It helps you better manage your care. It makes the most of the time you have with your healthcare team. As we all know, some of them are just, they're in and they're out. And you have just a small window of time to catch their attention. So it's very important to make it count. It reduces stress. because then you get your questions answered and you feel confident. Knowledge is power. So when you go in and you have your questions and you're armed with everything that you want answers to, and you get those answers, then you're ready to move on. How do you improve communication? With your notes, having those notes and being prepared, asking those questions, the most important ones first. The last thing you want to do is ask your questions and they're headed out the door. They're already thinking of the next patient and you go, oh, wait, I forgot to ask you. And it was the most important thing you wanted to know. So that you're just not going to get a good answer at that point. Talk to other members of your healthcare team. And you know what? When in doubt, second opinions are priceless. They're always worth it. And I greatly appreciate doctors who will readily say, absolutely, go see somebody else. Two heads are better than one. I had that conversation with my doctor yesterday. I'm having some health issues. And I asked about going to a large center in another state. And he said, I have no problem. And to me, that's the makings of a good doctor. So what do you do now if you get sick? So you've got this plan of what to do for a well visit or a routine visit. And we've talked about that. But now you're sick. And I don't know about you, but when I'm sick, or really when my kids are sick, especially my daughter, they don't seem to have a voice, and I don't have the energy. It's just, and that I think is most of us. So you kind of have to be prepared ahead of time. That's where that notebook comes in. You've got everything written down. And even when you start to feel sick, get that notebook out and write it down. August 12th, woke up with a sore throat this morning. Didn't really feel all that great. August 13th, today my temp was 99.4 and I'm coughing. August 15th, today I went to the doctor. You kind of have that picture. So when they say what brought you in, you've already got it documented. You don't have to sit there and think about it. Oh, well, when did I get sick? And when did this start? And what am I supposed to do? You've got it written down. Develop an illness protocol. And that's where it's going to get a little tricky. And we're going to talk about that. So an illness protocol is kind of dependent, and it's going to be dependent on what the illness is. And this is some of the preparation work you have to do ahead of time. So one of those things to ask, and usually I would say your PCP, your immunologist, whoever is sort of the top echelon of caregiving, who is going to be your team leader with you? Who do I call when I get sick? Do I call you as my immunologist? Or if it's heart related, do I call my cardiologist? If it's lung related, do I call my pulmonologist? How do I handle when I don't feel good? And that's going to be an individual decision. And I can't tell you there's a right way or a wrong way because every single doctor does it differently. So it's going to be a question, again, at that routine visit, when you're feeling good, to establish, what do I do when I get sick? Who do you want me to call? And have that conversation. If you feel like you need to be seen, who sees me? And those are the two most important questions to ask in that getting ready for when you are sick. Because remember, you're not going to have the energy and you're not going to feel good to be figuring out at that moment, what do I do now? So having that prepared ahead of time is what you need to do. Then you need to prepare for an emergency room visit or an urgent care visit. Again, you're going to have that notebook. Take that notebook with you. It has everything in it. You're going to have your immunologist information there. If you have a letter from your immunologist, that's fantastic. Saying this is usually what she gets or he gets, and this is usually how it's treated. It's something to consider. You're going to have your basic health information with you because you're going to take those papers. If they're on the computer, you're going to want to print out that list of medications that you're currently on. You're going to want to have that list of physicians that treat you. You're going to want to have those main things that we talked about earlier printed out and take it with you so they can see it. The other thing that you're going to want to have is the chapter in the IDF handbook of what you have. So if you have IgA deficiency, if you have common variable, if you have specific antibody, whatever it is, make a copy of what you have and take it with you and say, I'm immunocompromised. This is what I have. And I can answer any questions you have, but this is my immunologist number, and they can help you if you need to talk to them. Most ERs aren't going to know if you walk in and say, well, I have CVID. They're not going to know what it is. And so using just general terminology and then explaining or saying, here, I have this, or I'm immunocompromised, I have this. If you need to know more, I can answer your questions, or my significant other that is with me can help you. There's always the internet, and you can give them IDF's website, and we have a lot of information for clinicians, and there's a whole page for them that they can go and look up. So that's one of the things that I recommend when you're headed to the ER. We get a lot of questions about a medical alert bracelet. I will tell you, I've talked to a lot of doctors, but I've also talked to a lot of paramedics, and they're useless as far as having an immune disorder. What they want to know is if you are in a car accident, you can't talk. They want to know what you're allergic to. They want to know serious things that they need to know in taking care of you. So like in my situation, I'm allergic to CAT scan dye. So if I'm injured in a car accident, one of the first things they're going to do is want to do some kind of scan with dye. And then they're going to nearly kill me again. And that's just not going to end well. So I do wear one that says allergic to CAT scan dye. I don't have anywhere on there that I have an immune disorder, because if I'm in an accident, it has nothing to do with it. So it's kind of thinking in an emergency when you can't talk, do you have a pacemaker? Do you have, things like that they may not know that they need to know to take care of you. Allergies to medication that are severe, things like that. So we've talked about being ready. We've talked about getting ready to be sick. We've talked about going into the ER sick, going into the doctor sick. What happens if communication breaks down? Well, you don't feel like you're a part of the team. You feel like you're being talked down to or talked at, and that doesn't make you feel comfortable. Your healthcare team members aren't answering your questions. They don't want to hear your concerns. They don't want to address your problems. And worst of all, you leave your appointment and you didn't get anything answered. You feel like you walked in ready and hopeful, and you walked out scratching your head going, what just happened? And that's not a good sign. Oh, so anyway, what I was going to add to that is that's when it's time to change. And I tell people that your immunologist, or if you see a hematologist oncologist, or if you see an infectious disease specialist and they're caring for your PI, whoever is your main doctor, if you feel like things are falling through the cracks, if you have a relationship that's close enough to talk to them openly, I encourage you to do that. But if you feel like it's too far gone, or you meet with somebody the first couple times and you just aren't clicking, sometimes we just don't click, and that's okay. It's not that they're a bad person, you just don't click. You need to find somebody else though. You need to seek a second opinion. If you're getting confused about things, you're not quite sure that's the truth or really what you think is the truth, it's okay to get a second opinion. So when in doubt, I always encourage people to seek a second opinion. And if you aren't comfortable with your doctor, to please find another doctor, because this is somebody who has to be ready and willing to fight for you just as hard as you are going to fight for yourself. If that's not the case, then they're not the right physician for you. And lastly, IDF is here. We're here to help you. You can ask me anything you want through Ask IDF. You can go to the website and shoot me an email. You can call the 800 number and you can leave your phone number and your email and what it is you're asking about, and we'll be happy to answer. There's no question that we can't help you with. And I encourage you to reach out. So with that, Kathy, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Thank you, Colleen. Great information, and can't wait to hear the recording because there's so much here to remember. Oh my goodness. Thank you. It's a full-time job. And now back to Colleen. Colleen, I bet you have a few questions that have been submitted there that you want to answer.
Yeah, we got some questions that were very good. They were very thoughtful. Unfortunately, some of them I don't have answers to, or they're not very easily answered, but I will give it my good old college try. The one question I got was, my chart and other messaging platforms only allow me to talk to one physician at a time. Is there any way to communicate with team members with different specialties? And I will tell you, that is one thing that is very difficult. You can, in any system that I know of, only talk to one doctor at a time. So it is going to be very important when you are at the specialist's office to make sure that your team leader especially is getting everything from every specialist. You need that one doctor, whether it's your PCP, if you feel more comfortable with it being your infectious disease, it doesn't have to be your immunologist. It's whoever is going to be the person who is going to be your ringleader and is going to pull together all the information. You're going to be able to go in, you're going to be able to have a conversation about your rheumatology issue or your cardiology issue or your lung issue and your rheumatology issue, whatever it is, but they're going to kind of understand and be able to look at everything globally. They may not be able to deal with individual issues because of what those specialists are doing, but they're going to be able to kind of look at the big picture. And oftentimes what happens when you have all these specialists is they're all looking at it through very narrow glasses. And they look at one issue, one problem. They forget, oh yeah, she's on this medication for that problem. Or if I do this, then that's going to do that to this problem. And so you have to be very careful when you're seeing a lot of specialists that you've got that one doctor who's going to be able to take care of seeing kind of the whole picture, just like you are. And that's where I said a while back, your pharmacist is going to play a big role in that too, because your pharmacist is going to be able to look at all the different medications you're on and flag something and go, do you know that if you take this, then that medicine might not be as effective? Oh, no, I didn't know that. And do not assume, again, that your doctor knows that. They've all gone to computers, and sometimes those computers will catch it, but they don't always. And I had that happen to me with going through what I'm going through right now. And it could have caused serious issues. And it was the pharmacist who caught it. The physician had no idea that it was a contraindication with the medication that I'm on. So, that's where trust is imperative. And even with that, a pharmacist, having the same pharmacist that knows you and knows your medications, that you can have that conversation with. And in the end, I went back and said, I can't take this. And they ended up going, oh, I didn't know that. And they put me on something else. And it was the pharmacist who caught it. So making sure that you have somebody along with yourself who's kind of able to bounce questions off of, and, you know, my pulmonologist says this and my rheumatologist says this, and I'm sort of feeling like I'm in the middle, and my immunologist says I should do this. And what do you think I should do? Where do you think I should go? Or do you think all the players are doing the best they can to keep me healthy? I think is imperative to have. Transitioning from pediatric to adult care starts when they're young. That starts when they're 5 or 6. That starts with them knowing what immune disorder they have, what medication they're on, how much do they get, how often do they get it, why do they get it? And that goes with any medication that they're on. And then as they get older, it's getting them to have more and more of a voice. We have, IDF has an amazing transition guide, and it walks you through the steps, and it's from pediatric to adult care. And it takes you through the different ages and what you should expect at those ages. And it's a good thing to remember too, speaking from experience, that it's good to teach your children with immune disorders that they have problems, and not forget the child who doesn't have any health problems, because then he's going to get to the dentist and not know how to fill out his form because his mother didn't teach him anything. So just saying, remember, all your children need to learn how to talk to the adult doctors. But that's the biggest thing with transitioning. And also talking to your immunologist. If your child is reaching that age of 20, 21-ish, how old will they treat until? Some of them will treat all the way through adulthood. There is no age limit. Some will only treat to a certain age, and then they must transition. And that is when you start to ask, okay, who do you recommend? And maybe there's a program where they get to have that immunologist as an adult immunologist come in during their pediatric visit and meet them and see, again, is there a connection? Do they click? Is there some kind of bond there even initially? And that's very important. Somebody had written in how and what to communicate with healthcare providers who seem unfamiliar with PI, minimize the symptoms and their personal history, and just sort of say they're anxious and they really don't have any issues. Again, education, education, education. Taking that patient and family handbook that is on the IDF website, and I know somebody said they had a problem looking for it, is the patient and family handbook. And it is on there under publications. That's vital. And also getting them involved with IDF. We will send them materials, and you'd be surprised. Sometimes there are doctors who can be real hard-headed and really think they know it all and they've got it, and they get the materials and they admit that they were wrong or they didn't quite understand, and maybe you help the person that comes behind you. And now they understand you a little bit more, and they are more quick to better diagnose and more accurately diagnose the person coming behind you. So education, education, and it won't stop. I mean, you have to understand you don't have a medical degree, but you are going to be educating physicians and nurses and medical clinicians for the rest of your life. And if you're lucky and fortunate, they will be receptive of that. How do I find a doctor who knows how to treat CVID? IDF has a clinician finder resource tab at the top of the website page. You can go in there and you can search for clinicians in your area. We're trying to grow it beyond immunologists. So any specialists that you have, rheumatologists, oncologists, infectious disease, pediatricians, family practice, if they want to be involved with IDF, we would love to have them involved, and we can give them materials. We can help them learn all about PI and what the different PIs are. And again, it's a win-win for everybody. It's a win for them because they learn more about what a PI is and how to spot a zebra, and you get better care. So it's a win-win situation. How do I support our daughter who is sick constantly and becoming resistant to meds? By being there. By being there and helping her fight the fight. When she's sick, that's when she needs you the most. And again, that's when that voice needs to be the loudest. And even though she's not maybe a minor anymore, if it's okay with her, go to the visits, be there. And one of the things that I say to my kids all the time, who are now 22 and 26, I don't care what we face as a family, we face it together, so that she knows she's never alone. And yeah, there'll be hard days and there'll be good days, and you're always going to be there. My son with PI, along with other health issues, recently had surgery and needed to be in the hospital instead of outpatient. And the hospital is fighting, or the insurance company is fighting it because he, according to them, didn't need to be in the hospital. And that's going to be, again, asking the doctor to file documentation as to why they were in the hospital. And or getting a patient advocate involved in your insurance company is always a good thing to have, especially if you have a lot of physicians, if you're seeing a lot of different doctors in different places. Having an insurance advocate on your side to help you wade through the waters and the bills and putting it all together and getting good care is oftentimes the best way to go, because that's their job, is to fight alongside for you. Strategies for keeping specialists informed, making decisions for selecting a doctor. Again, it's the doctor that you click with. It's the doctor who's receptive to what you're saying, what they're willing to learn. When our kids were young, Adam was the first kid he had that had an immune disorder. He now has almost 20, because in the 24 years that we've been here, he has gone to IDF meetings. He has been to IDF national conferences. He has taken all the materials. He's had his other physicians in his practice learn. So it's making sure that you have a doctor who's willing to learn. And if you don't, it's moving on. But it's providing them with the opportunity to learn. And hopefully you can find one that is willing to do that. Keeping specialists informed, that again is going to be something that's probably going to fall on your shoulders. It's again going to be making sure that, did the rheumatologist follow up and send the person I wanted sent the records, those kinds of things, and then following up to make sure they receive those records. Let me see. How do you find a patient advocate when you're in HMO? I would assume that an HMO still has to have some type of patient advocacy. And that's something that we would have to look into. Again, Ask IDF, and we can look into that. HMOs are a different animal, and sometimes they can be a lot more difficult. But we do have ways to help you. But I think that's about all the questions that I think I've answered, all of them that I got. I hope I've helped some. And I hope you've learned a little bit on how to be the ringleader and of your care, and how to have that partner in crime with you, and that you can lead your best life. And if you need help along the way, IDF is here for you.
Thank you, Colleen. Thank you so much. And everybody, you'll think of questions later, just send them right over to Ask IDF. Wonderful job. Well, at this time, we are going to give a huge thank you to today's featured sponsors, CSL Behring, Grifols, Takeda, Credo, Farming Healthcare, X4 Pharmaceuticals, and Kedrion Biopharma. Thank you. Thank you for your support. Great to hear from you. And then, of course, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for hanging in there with us tonight, for joining us. Thank you for your great questions. And we are looking forward to seeing you next week, Zebras Fit for Life, session 2. And between now and then, wishing you a wonderful week and take care, stay well. Thank you.